Welcome back, guys, to You Not Crazy Conversations of Hope. We are on episode 3 today. We are talking about vulnerability, guys, and the importance of vulnerability in intimacy and how vulnerability strengthens connections in relationships. Ooh, I'm so excited to have a special guest. But before I introduce her, I just want to let you know, listen, vulnerability plays a crucial role in fostering those deep connections and intimacy. I've heard that intimacy, I heard someone say it like, into me you see. All right, so I have a guest today who's so close to my heart. This is Amanda Henderson. Y'all, let me introduce you all to her. She is an educator, a creative entrepreneur here based in Orlando. She's the owner of All Things Crafty by Amanda. Listen, she brings your imagination to life through these beautifully crafted, custom-made items. Listen, it brings joy to me when she makes things for me, so I know it brings joy to you guys. Listen, her passion for creativity fuels her business, making her projects even just a masterpiece. So listen, I have her here today because she's been married for 18 years. All right, guys. So she's going to share some heartfelt insights on the evolving journey of marriage and how embracing vulnerability is a path to growth and connection, guys. So we're going to tune into her reflections on love, partnerships, and resiliency, so you can understand how to navigate the ups and downs of long-term relationships and just see how important vulnerability is needed to navigate them ups and downs. All right, so again, she is an educator and a business owner, and so I'm just so excited to have her here as she's just going to talk about connections and how important it is to be authentic and understanding. All right, so we're going to dive in. All right. So what is vulnerability in relationships, you ask? Well, listen, vulnerability is a powerful catalyst for building meaningful connections in relationships, especially one romantic partnerships. Listen, it involves exposing your authentic self. And I know that's hard, right?
Yes,
Listen, it includes sharing your weaknesses, your insecurities, and your needs, right? She's at home on that, right? While trusting that the other person will respect and value your openness, guys. Listen, so I hope you're going to take away that, listen, you have to be open. You have to be authentic about your thoughts, your feelings, your fears, your desires, right? So that you can create a space for trust, intimacy, and understanding. Those things are needed for the relationship to flourish. Listen, why being open matters, I think a lot of times people think that vulnerability is often seen as a weakness.
Yeah.
But in reality, y'all, listen, it is a powerful tool for emotional healing, connection, and personal growth. But just again, for connection in relationships, guys, because we want people to see us for where we are. So it is important that you create that space again for healing. So let's just talk a little bit about it, guys, because listen, Amanda has been married for 18 years, and so I'm sure she has some experience, right? As women, that sometimes we bottle up our emotions, right? We don't share things, and oftentimes research has shown us that can lead to stress, anxiety, and even depression, right? So we want to really talk about how opening up fosters emotional resiliency. So let's start just a little bit about the struggles of opening up. So many people associate vulnerability with weakness. How would you define vulnerability in the context of relationships from your personal experience?
Amelia, as you stated before, it's simply letting someone know your deepest fears, your emotions, whether they be good or whether they be bad. Simply letting them experience your whole self, your mind, your body, who you are as a person.
I love that. So letting people in to see the different aspects of who you are, right? So I love how you said your emotions, even what's going on in your body, your spirit, even on your spiritual journey, right? Definitely. And so, I think about, as a therapist, I hear people again talk about vulnerability as a weakness, but again, it is a strength to
Yes,
do
it
so.
is.
But oftentimes, in our community, people struggle with opening up emotionally, right? And so, why do you think so many people struggle with opening up emotionally?
From past pain, past experiences, when they when you express yourself to someone, you expect a certain response. So when you don't get that response from
That's
them,
good.
you build up a wall unknowingly sometimes. And so when you keep experiencing negativity, when you express your emotions, now you're like, well, I'm no longer going to express myself because every time I do, I get this negative response.
I love that. I love that, right? So when people don't receive us well, right,
Right.
it can shut us down, right? And then I also believe sometimes that people, are afraid of being open because of fear of what you're saying is judgment.
Right.
That's what
Fear
it
of
is.
rejection, yeah.
Fear of rejection, right? And those past wounds that can kind of play into that. And then sometimes when we're rejected, it also can be a control thing, right? We don't want to feel as though someone's able to get us to that point where we
Right.
feel weak or vulnerable or rejected, right? And so those things really play into it. But at the same time, as though we have those fears, right, of being rejected, fear of abandonment, I really want to hone in why it's important to be vulnerable, because ultimately vulnerability really enhances connections. All right. So research tells us that there are a lot of benefits, guys, for embracing vulnerability. First, listen, when you hold things in, we call that avoidance, right? And so that's when things get bottled up inside. But as we release and we're sharing with those people in our lives, it can improve emotional regulation. All right. So talking about our emotions is what helps us process them more effectively. Right. And then if people are able to see you, and I think you said this before, you could share your fears and things that even are going on in your body.
Right.
When they understand, it builds empathy, first and all.
Right.
And that is so important to strengthening relationships, right? Just being authentic. All right. So being authentic builds trust and
Yes, it
deepens
does.
relationship, because they can make those connection points with you. Right. And it also stops the concept of perfectionism. I think
Oh, boy.
another reason why a lot of times we don't want to be vulnerable, because we don't want to show people our weakness. We don't want
Right.
them to know we have fears. We want to be strong, right?
Yeah.
We want this image or this facade that we have it all together. And that ideal or that ideology can really impact our ability to connect and help people relate to us, right? And then ultimately, the more they know about you guys, that can reduce shame, right? So sharing our struggles helps break the stigma around mental health and just having those conversations. So Amanda, again, you've been married for 18 years. That is beautiful, right?
you.
So we really want to talk about how vulnerability enhances connection. All right. So I know there's, pivotal times where we don't want to share things with our spouses, right? Because we're afraid of, telling them about us and then they either rejecting us or not accepting us. But research shows that vulnerability fosters trust and emotional intimacy. So Amanda, you've been married for 18 years. What changes did you notice in your relationship when you and your spouse became more open with each other?
It definitely built up trust in the relationship. I got to see him in a different light.
like that.
I got to experience another side of him and better understand why he did some of the things he did, or why he said some of the things that he said. And I believe vice versa as well.
I like that. Yeah. So being open allows us to be understanding, build that empathy, right? And so we can overcome these barriers to vulnerability. Listen, fear a lot of times can affect our ability to be vulnerable, right? Fear, as we mentioned earlier, being judged, rejected, or perceived as weak if we open up about our struggles. But what's more important for us to understand that, guys, fear can lead to isolation, and this can bring a wedge in relationships. relationships, right? And so that also can impact our mental health because we feel alone and in a relationship. And so we don't want to do that, right? So avoiding vulnerability can result in emotional suppression a lot of times, right? And so sometimes, when we've been in relationships for so long and we keep stuff to ourselves, right? This can lead to burnout and emotional breakdowns, right? And so I want to kind of discuss a little bit more about, just overcoming some barriers. What do you think were some personal obstacles that you face in being vulnerable with your spouse? Any barriers you had to overcome?
Personally, I had to overcome speaking up for myself. I was always feeling like I'm the type of person I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
Okay,
that's me. So,
she's so sweet.
So I would think about like, well, hey, if I say this, how is he gonna feel? But then again, I was neglecting how I felt, trying to worry about how he was feeling instead of expressing myself. So I got to a point where I could tell him how I felt without necessarily hurting his feelings, but still telling the truth on how I felt. So
that's good. So it seemed like you overcome the barrier of keeping things to yourself, right?
Correct.
So a lot of times that concept is we don't want to be seen as a burden or a source of negativity, right? But a lot of times that's because we don't have a tolerance for being uncomfortable, right? So we have to build the tolerance for being uncomfortable. So how did you and your spouse work through these barriers together?
Well, listen, I don't think we worked through them together because I think we sat down, was like, because at some point in time we were arguing. Every time we had a conversation,
honestly,
we were arguing. And then so at one point it got silent. Okay. It was silent.
Okay.
And then I just had to be like, okay, we're going to have a conversation. We're going to take it slow. I'm going to give him a little bit at a time.
That's good.
I'm not going to give him everything.
That's good.
Because every time I give everything, we end up having an argument. And so I'm going to just give you a little bit at a time.
Okay.
And when I gave a little bit at a time, it got better.
Okay. I love that. Listen, guys, she basically gave you some real, because this is why I want to have these conversations, guys, because I think a lot of times we live in society, especially with social media, that we're going to have these relationships and we're going to have these beautiful conversations all the time. We're going to connect and we're going to be vulnerable. We're going to say the things that we need to say.
We're going to say it right, the right time.
And we're going to say it right at the right time, in the right space, and provide all this emotional honesty, and they're just going to receive it.
No.
That's not how it works.
No,
this is 18 years on the journey, guys. It doesn't work like that. And I love how she said that when she recognized that, they both were doing what we call emotional suppression, the relationship got silent.
Yes.
And I think that's the honesty that, when we're navigating as 18 years such as we all are inspiring to get to, hopefully, right? There's going to be some ups and downs. And so we need to take some steps towards creating vulnerability in our relationships. And one of the things she said as a practical step or strategy for cultivating vulnerability is time and space and environment, guys, and taking it slow.
Yes.
All right. So she said she created an environment, right, for vulnerability, so that both parties can kind of take the time to do what we say in therapy is active listening.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And it sounded like you also was setting intentional time.
Yes.
Right.
Like I know when to say something and when not to say it.
Listen, that's
like if we had a hard day at work, I'm not gonna come in and dump everything. I'm gonna feed them give them some food, let them take a shower, and then maybe we can discuss it later. Like when you're getting a little tired and a little restless, But time and place. And you have to study your spouse. You have to study any relationship. So that's what I've been working on.
I love that. Study your partner, guys, as another strategic, because, and that involves emotional regulation, as you mentioned before, right? If I know that I have something on my mind, I have to settle my spirit first.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Because if not, it's going to come out.
Yeah, it will.
It ain't gonna come out good either,
no,
right?
So show up and show out.
It's gonna show up and show out, right? And we don't want that. So we need to make sure we are settled within our spirit first, guys. There's a time and a place. And she said something key that's really really helpful, guys. Again, she's 18 years, guys. Take this away. She said she studied her partner.
Yes.
She recognized when he would be open to receiving information, right? And she just didn't lay it all out when he came through the door. She studied him to see where he was, you know, in his day. And so I think those are some strategic strategies. And so I just want to give you a little bit more as far as practicing vulnerability, guys. That can include writing it down. I know that helps me, right? Before I have a conversation with my partner, I write it down.
Right.
And then another strategy is, as she mentioned, is embracing the discomfort, right? Sometimes we have to sit with it and figure out what it is we want to say before we say it. It's just wisdom, guys. You know, we study to make sure that we are saying things in gentleness and kindness and love, right? So, and we also want to challenge the perception of being perfect. Right. Again, this is a journey. How long did it take you to get there? Tell the people.
Today.
Okay.
I'll just play. It took a while.
It takes a while, guys.
It's not an overnight process.
It's not overnight. That's what I really want to hone in, because a lot of times we're dealing with a generation that's the popcorn. They want to get in, they want to get out, they want to go to the next.
They don't want to do any work.
They don't want to do the work. But intimacy and vulnerability requires time, patience. It's a process, guys, right? And so that's another strategy. Give it time. So, and then just keep in mind, guys, that when you are framing your thoughts with someone that you love and you're sharing those emotions, you want to make sure that you are framing the thoughts around your experience rather than assigning blame. All right. So it takes those small steps, guys, to really open up and share those things, and also practice self-compassion, guys. Remind yourself that it's okay to have difficult emotions. And if it gets too hard and you need help with skills, seek a safe space, right? So whether that's therapy or support group or was there anybody that you seek advice from during your process?
My mom,
your mom,
my dad, my husband's father.
Okay, I love that, right? So people who have already set the blueprint, who's already been where we're trying to go, guys, right? So remember, listen, vulnerability is a strength, right? And so we only just need to take those steps of courage towards the direction of healing those different dynamics or the lack of intimacy within our relationships. So I always encourage couples to practice those small acts of vulnerability daily. Set aside some time dedicated each week to discuss emotions, challenges, and victories. Another thing you guys can do, listen, routines like gratitude, journaling together, or having those end of the day conversations about what you appreciate about each other is important. And listen, physical vulnerability is also important. So remember, the journey of vulnerability, is a journey. It's an ongoing journey, right? So after 18 years, do you feel that vulnerability is that something that comes naturally, or like you said, you're still working on it?
I'm still working on it.
Okay.
But it is. It really is. And like you say, you show gratitude. The simplest things. Can you fix me a cup of water? Thank you for fixing me a cup of water. You know, just being thankful and grateful every day.
I love that. So as we close, what encouragement would you give to couples who are hesitant to being vulnerable with each other?
I would say, take it slow, give bit by bit.
Okay.
It won't happen overnight. So just, like you say, sit with that, whatever you want to say or whatever you want to do, sit with it first. You know your spouse, or you know your relationships. Sit with how you want, sit with the questions, sit with the answers before you present it.
Okay. I love that. Listen, final thought, guys. Vulnerability is not about oversharing or being emotionally exposed at all times. It's about allowing yourself to be seen and supported. And so by embracing it, we open the door to connection, healing within a relationship, and ultimately your improved health. So I hope you reflect on how vulnerable you are in your relationships and what areas you can improve on. So don't forget to connect with us, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We want to thank you, Amanda, so much. She holds a special place in my heart, guys. This is my oldest sister. I love her, guys. So thank you so much for joining me today. I greatly appreciate it. And I hope that the viewers feel seen and validated as they are working towards their journey of bringing more vulnerability vulnerability in their intimate relationship. Thank you again, guys, for tuning in. We'll see you on the next episode.